There you all are. Hey, welcome everybody. Tonight what I want to do is I want to do some basics, some 101 work inside xLights and talk about submodels. We did a whole webinar on submodels. I want to hit just the basics tonight, and I want to show a couple basic things with just a simple prop. I'm gonna try downloading from the Boscoia website one model specifically, and see if I can't get something that doesn't have like perfect submodels. We've spent a lot of time, Robert and I, the PPD team has spent a lot of time doing what we call certified models, which have gone through and prepared ahead of time a lot of updated versions of submodels that would apply to some of our sequencing, so that it makes it easier for the users, the end users, to come in and begin to import sequences from Pixel Pro displays. But the challenge that some people have might be in how they make their own, or what they're doing with them, what kind of things to expect from them. So I just want to go through some of those basic things. So I want to talk about the four things I want to talk about is how we build submodels, how they're created, the options in the submodel dialog box. I want to talk about different ways effects are cast over top of the submodels, and some basics to mapping to the effects to submodels for better sequencing, and finally, why too many submodels can be a bad thing. Anybody in chat, throw a prop that you'd like to see some basic submodeling done on. We're talking about a basic prop. We're not talking about high definition. I like the well, there's two good ones there that just popped up. Dale says a candy cane, which is a great idea, and Lori says a mini tree, which is another great idea. I think we're going to go with the candy cane. So what I'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll go in and we'll download, as soon as it refreshes here, we'll download from Boscoia their basic candy cane, because it has no submodels in it. The less pixels, the longer, the more pixels, the longer it takes to build these submodels. So I don't want to, we can't be here forever building submodels, but you can do the building on your own, let's put it that way. Yeah, oh, we don't use a Mac here, Brad, sorry about your luck. Okay, so here we have a model. We can see that, we can tell by the little missing caret, or the note, the missing of the greater than sign, it's not a caret, beside the prop, that there is no submodels attached to this whatsoever. So what we'll do is we'll come down here, we have it selected, and whenever you have it selected, you can come down here to the submodel dialog, and you'll click the three dots in the box here, and it just popped up over here on the other screen. So the first step in creating a submodel would be to add. We'll click the add button down here in the bottom, and then we're going to give it a name. Let's give it one basic submodel that pretty much any prop can have would be an outline. So if you think of a spinner, the spinner ring, the giant ring around the outside of a spinner, that's an outline. You can submodel that and do cool stuff with that. You can think about other submodels, like maybe a snowflake has arms, maybe the stars have the tips on them and so forth. The snowflakes have the little tips on the end. The snowflakes have rings, the spinners have rings, and so forth. So basically the idea is that you're creating something that may not physically appear there, but you're creating it so that you can cast something onto it. So what I'm going to do is we'll do the outline, and I'm going to type outline in there. I'll hit the tab button, and then I'll come down and I will click onto the first line where it says bottom here. And there is always a method to the madness whenever it comes to creating the submodel. The selection of the pixels is at the utmost importance, meaning whatever the selection of the pixels is, that's the order that the pixels get the effects applied to. So I'm going to start here and I'm very consistent. Be very consistent with your submodels across your platform, because if you do one submodel that is, let's say, counterclockwise and one that's clockwise on the same prop, you'll have them going in opposite directions. But at the same time, if that's the look you're going for, far be it for me to tell you you've done something wrong. If you want them all doing the same type of thing, build the submodels all the same way across the different props. Sometimes it's not important to be so specific, but in this instance it's very important to be specific. So real quick, Dale just posted a question in chat. He says, lasso large areas of pixels. We'll get into that because I'm going to show you that here in a second. I'm going to select the direction that I want the prop to go in or the effect to go in. And I'm going to start here at the bottom, and I'm just going to work my way around. And as you can see, click and drag, and that highlights some of these pixels up and makes them a little bit brighter. And this is why we're not going with a giant 700, 800, 2,000 pixel prop, because it will just take too long to create some of those submodels. But this is the basics. So what I'm doing is I'm going into what's called a selection order. And the order that I'm selecting these props in is the exact order that the effect is going to go in whenever you place it onto it. So let's go ahead and we've completed it. We'll go ahead and click OK. Never hit the X. You can't hit the X. Once you make a change, they won't let you close out. You can either cancel. If you hit cancel, it will not save any changes. You want to hit OK, and that will save your changes. And then obviously hit your red save button down here. So now you can see we have a greater than sign, and then we have an outline submodel. And if we click on it, you can see very clearly. We'll move it up here where it's got the black background. If we click on just the outline, you'll see that the inside pixels that have not been selected, those are not going to be part of the submodel, or of the submodel. They're not going to be activated if we put a prop or an effect onto the prop or onto the submodel. So quickly, I'm just going to go in here, create a new animation sequence. Nothing fancy. We're just quickly getting to something where we can go sequence. Now I think that's called Boscoio Chroma Kane 8. Let's go over. We need to go into display elements and go find this thing real quick, because I'm not sure where it's at in the list. But it's probably easier for me to go ahead and put this on a simpler list. Here's my moving head faces group, or my faces group. I can go find, what was it, Boscoio Chroma Kane 48. That would be it. So there it is. If we've added it to that view, so I can see it, so I can sequence it. Once you put it in the view, if you are just doing this in a blank layout where you don't have anything in your layout, it's the only thing that will show up. But if you have a bunch of props, you'll have to go find it somewhere and find it in the list. Once you do, to open up and see the submodel, you'll just double click on the prop, and you can see here where it says outline. Now I'm going to place a timing mark here. Lowercase letter t, anywhere up here in the grid you put a timing mark by clicking up on the waveform there, and you can have a little grid to click on. And the way that I test submodels is I use the single strand effect, which is located right here. Now I have a keyboard shortcut, but you can see here we're using the render style called default, and let me make that a white color. And let me pull this out here. So, oops, sorry. Grabbed the wrong thing. There we go. All right, you should be able to see that pretty good there. I'm going to get rid of the red. I'm just going to leave it white, and I'm going to make the chase size much larger. So if you remember watching the entire click and drag process, I started here in the bottom left of the candy cane, went up and around the top, and then down to the bottom. And this is exactly what we talk about when we build submodels. There is a flow to building the submodels in the manner of something at which, when you apply an effect to it, different effects will work a very specific way for them. When we put this into a quote-unquote a group, things become a little bit different. So I'm going to show you this here real quick. I'm going to select the submodel. I'm going to right click and I'm going to add this to an existing group. Add selection to existing group. So just the submodel, not the model. And I'm going to add this to something simple. Let's say the spinner rings group in our PPD layout. We would call it the spinner rings or spinner ring. Spinner ring right there. And I'm just going to put a checkbox in there, click OK. And I'm going to go back to the sequencer tab. I'm going to take the effect off of here. This is my test. I've tested to make sure that it works. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete the effect. I'm going to go back into my my new master view, and I'm going to go find, and I use my colors here to find them, my light blue color. There's my spinner ring group, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to close the preview here because we'll use the whole house preview here. And I'm going to put a single strand effect. Okay, so now you can see the candy cane there. Just the default model, or the default of the single strand effect in a default render style going left to right. xLights is sequencing the effect or applying the effect from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen because that's the way the default version of single strand works. In order for me to update or share the or to change how the effect is rendered, what we have to do is, because we're in a group, this is a group here, this is a group icon, where if we go back into the model, the display elements, this icon here, it stands for that this is a group. If you are in a group or sequencing in a group, you are given a significant number of render styles that you get to play with. And so this is how me as a creator, as a sequencer, I can go in and tell this effect to act differently because there are different props or different models in a group. This happens to be a group of submodels. There are no whole models, just the submodels are in here, okay? So if I go down here to per model default, in other words, treat this effect like it's being treated as a default individual prop. If I do that per model default, look what happens. So in this instance, I have a counterclockwise movement around the outside of the rings, but here in this instance, I have a clockwise movement around the candy cane. So this is the idea behind what we did when we created our certified models, which we wrote a lot of submodels into props that maybe didn't exist, so that when you map them in, our groups were already there, and all of this hard work had already been done for you. This is one of the things that we spent a lot of time on, trying to make it look very very neat and tidy compared to the way we sequence. Now there's different render styles and they all do different things. You could do horizontal stacked, see how it's going to go in the group order, it's going to apply that effect in the group order. You could do horizontal per model per strand, and now it's just lighting them all up because the way the buffer looks is a little more detailed. The way the buffer works, it works a little bit differently, so the prop doesn't go in a path, it follows the order that those props are in the group. So I'll show you that real quick too. So this is another reason why if you're seeing things that happen whenever you change your render style, let's go to the spinner ring group. And here you see the group is selected. Here you see right here, all of the props are lit up, all of the submodels for those. And this order right here is what matters. So this is the first one, the circle on the left. This one is the right one, the circle on the right. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So the effect is getting applied horizontally per model in the order that these are from top to bottom inside your group. And that's why you see the first one lights up is this left one right here. The second one that lights up is this one over here, which I can't just click and drag on some of these, but you get the idea. There's the second one, then the third one here in the middle, the fourth one, the fifth one, the sixth one, and then it goes to the candy cane, even though the candy cane is all the way up here. it's going horizontally through that group, that order that it's in. So be careful if you're adding your submodels to a group, and some of those render styles that I might use when I'm sequencing or another sequencer is using, it may look great on their layout setup. However, the problem could be that you haven't or didn't realize that that simple change in the layout. Let's say, let me go back in here, spinner ring, let me move this, and I want this to be first. If I click and drag the candy cane outline to move it to the first position, I can re-render that effect, and now the candy cane goes first, then the spinners, then this one, and now it's turning off in the opposite direction. So this could be, for some people who are seeing weird things or it doesn't look right, that could be one of the challenges that you're facing. Now, I want to get back to something that Dale brought up, a question that was in chat real quick, about bulk model selection, a bulk pixel selection. So if I bulk pixel select, I go into the submodel dialog, let's add a new submodel, we'll call this bulk. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab the pixels in bulk. Like, that's easy, right? That's super easy. Like, Clyde, what are you doing? Why are you making me work so hard? And I have to select everything in a specific order. Okay, I just bulk selected everything. Way faster, right? Okay, so now here's where we have a different kind of issue. I'm going to take this off of here. Let's go back to our faces group here where we can see the two submodels here. So again, we'll put the single strand on there per model default. You can see the candy cane activating itself, going in its order that we already know that it's going to work from. But if we take the single strand effect and put it on the bulk order, this is what happens whenever you bulk grab pixels. xLights will take the pixels, and I believe what it will do is, if we started from here on the left-hand side, clicked and dragged over, and xLights took them from left to right, not even numerically, but took them left to right, and I don't know that it is or it is not. And then I went up this side here. Well, it took it numerically, whichever one was in this straight line, whatever numerically was first in that. Whoop, sorry, I'm all over the place here. It took those, it looks like numerically, and it put them in a certain order, and now you're getting something that looks very non-standard. So Dale has a question. It says, what is strand 1? Strand 1 means that it's plugged in to an output. There's one strand on the prop. That's what that means. So if you had 2 strands or 3 strands, if you look at the star here, it probably has, oh no, I'm sorry, no it doesn't. This layout's not set up for what I'm trying to explain. Don't worry about that. Alex says to go ahead and do a right-click sort by location on the group. Sort by location on the group. Sort by location on the group. So let's go back to the group. Oh yeah, I knew this. This is, here we go. If you select the group and you come down here and you right-click, you can do sort by name or sort by location. And what that will do is that will sort the group from left to right on the screen. And so that just kind of fixed maybe a left to right look. That's certainly an option. So the idea is that effects get cast over top of these submodels in different ways depending on what's going on in your layout. If the person who sequences the song that you're mapping from, they didn't take the time to do that, and things are a little bit more random-like, and you've taken the time and it looks a little bit more patterned, you'll see a difference because your layouts or your group's not set up the exact same as theirs. That could be a good thing. That may be something that disappoints you. But in any event, you understand that there's the way that those mapped effects can come across as being something completely different than what is expected is due to the order that they're selected in or the order that the pixels are selected in, which is probably the biggest thing that somebody is going to notice whenever you apply an effect. Now, another thing that I want to share is something that has there's a number of things about the submodel dialog. So if we go into this, I do want to point out a couple things. First, let's go in and give me a second here. So first, let's just walk through the submodel dialog just so that you're aware of some things that are in here. You may not use all of these. It may be important to you, may not be important to you. But one of the things that that can help you as you're doing things over time in xLights with the submodel dialog is knowing what all of these functions are. First one, and I've done videos on this before. You're welcome to look at the old videos that I did. I did one last year that was rather intensive on submodels. But one of the things I want to point out is the buffer style. The default buffer style, what you have to imagine the default buffer style is as a single string of lights. From a left to a right. If you're looking at my hands, I'm doing it backwards. From a left to the right is how xLights sees every submodel by default. If you change the buffer and you make it a vertical buffer, I think it actually turns it and goes like this. I think, because what happens is that if it turns the buffer, it doesn't allow the effects to flow the same way. And what do I mean by this? Well, I'm gonna come back up here. I'm gonna go to this outline, and I'm going to select it, and I'm going to copy it. So this is outline 1, and we're gonna change the name from outline 1 to vertical. So this is the exact same as the first one. The difference is we're going to check the checkbox, and you're going to see the difference between this and the render of this effect over top of it. So you see outline vertical, and where'd my little screen go? There we go. Okay, so here you see this is the bulk one. This is weird. I'm going to move this down to other vertical. It's not doing anything. It's doing a full on, because and here I'll shorten it so maybe you can see it. Maybe it'll do it. Not really. It's just going to light up. It's going to be full on. The reason why it works differently than the outline, so this is going from left to right on the submodel, it's taking that actual line and it's taking the line and going like this to it. So what has to happen is, in order to sequence with the single strand on the outline vertical, what you have to do is you have to transform the buffer by 90 degrees. And now you get that same flow rate. So if one sequencer sequences on a prop that has a vertical buffer set on their props, all of their effects may be rendered at a 90-degree angle in a different manner than the way we might do it, which is without the vertical buffer. Some people might call this the old way to sequence. Fair enough. The way that we learned about submodels is that we learned that in order to make the effect go across them in a desirable manner that followed a path, for example, a path in our PPD wreath, I'm looking in chat, and there's a couple questions that popped up, so forgive me for stuttering. The idea behind doing the change in the buffer was something that came up afterwards, before when we were getting our grips with, or coming to grips with, pixel selection, and knowing that if I place this pixel, and then this pixel, and this pixel, and this pixel, if I select them in a selection order, then I'm going to get a certain path. The vertical buffer, I don't know when they added the vertical buffer. Maybe somebody does. Maybe somebody does know. That's fine. But what some of the newer submodels have come out with in some of the other vendors or some of the other prop manufacturers or some of the other sequencers have done is they have based all of their effects on this vertical buffer, that function. And so if you're not aware of it, what you might need to do is you might need to duplicate, just like I did, copy this, and then recreate that and rename it default, maybe outline default as opposed to, and then just take the check mark off of it and rename it default. And you might have to do that if you're mapping from one or another. Otherwise, what you might end up having to do is you might end up having to bulk edit and change and rotate every individual effect if it doesn't look good on your prop, if it doesn't make sense on your prop, or if it doesn't fit the flow of the prop. So there's a lot built. There's a lot of things that are built into submodels that a lot of us. It took us a long time to really get to grips, and as we were, it was growing and changing. And I mean, the biggest growth spurt for the submodels, I would say, was 2020 into 2021 to 22. And there was so much added to this dialog box. So the next thing I want to show you is I want to share with you this, what I call, this isn't the official term, I don't know what the official term is, I just made this up, what I call stacking the submodels. So if I come in here and I click on, I have a submodel that I didn't name yet, we'll call this stacked. Now, the nice thing about a candy cane is you can put stripes on a candy cane. So what if we did a stripe, let's start at the bottom left here, and I'm going to go up one, and then I'm going to come over one, and then up one, then over one, and then up one, okay? I can add another row to this, and I can put this row down below it, and I can skip to the 1, 2, and I can go to this one and go 1, 2, over 1, 2, over 1, 2. This is something I did with my own candy canes, and it's just something fun to do, to add extra effects in if you want. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Add another row. Skip 1, skip 2. We'll do that one, this one, that one, this one, and that one, and this one. That'll. Oh. And if you screw up, like I grabbed this one here, hold the shift key down, click and drag, and that will deselect the one that you didn't want to grab. So now you have 4 submodels stacked into one submodel. And what does that look like? So if we'll click OK, I'll hit save. Let's go in here and see where it says stacked. Now again, this is the vertical buffer. Let's just grab it. Let's re-grab the effect. It'll reset it. There we go. So we have stacked, and as you can see, it's going slowly because that's, I could make it a little faster, and we'll make it a little longer. So you can see how it's following the path individually of each of those stacked submodels. Anything that was stacked in there, we did it in selection order, so it's sending it through the path. And it's doing it exactly the same across all of the stripes that are on the candy cane all at once. Now, what's nice about this is you can do this. We did this with, I did this in the PPD wreath for the, and I'll show you this real quick. We did this for the spiral clockwise and the spiral counterclockwise. And this was hard. Back in the day, we didn't have click and drag. I had to print out a piece of paper I had to print a piece of paper out and had all the numbers of these, and I literally had to manually hand type these in because you couldn't click and drag. So that was very antiquated. But this was the easy way for me to do it. I just typed it in these lines. Now, if I wanted to separate these arms so I could just articulate only the odds or only the evens, we'll say, I could do that by right-clicking on the drop-down selection, and I could, let's see, where are you at? Where are you at? Expand all strands or convert blind. Oh wait, maybe it's over here. sort by a split. I can use the split function, and it will make splits just down the line here. It'll call it spiral clockwise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever the number is. Just like the rings here. See, the rings are all individual rings. It would do the exact same thing. It would say spiral clockwise 1 through whatever, however many that would be. So, and we'll actually do that. We'll do that over here because this is our demonstration after all. So you can see this. So here's our bulk. We put our stacked. We put all our stacked in here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to rename it. Let's call it stripes. Okay, so there's the name, stripes, and we'll go right click, we'll go ahead and split it, and now see it says stripes -01 through 04. And now you have individual control over those individual stripes. And you could obviously put these into your submodel groups, maybe your spinner arms, or you put them in with you put it in with I don't know, the snowflake arms. You could use the spinner rings. You've got plenty of options that you could put these into. But in any event, the idea behind building submodels, it's not hard. But just know that if you do split them, you do have now individual ones that you have to put into a group versus, if I go back in here real quick, let's see, PPD wreath spiral clockwise. Look at the groups here. I have 2 PPD wreaths in the layout, by the way, and you can see here's the first one and here's the second one. It's much more simplistic to have them stacked, but sometimes whenever you apply effects to them, you can't get certain looks. So sometimes I'm disappointed because I did it this way, but most of the time I'm really happy I did it this way, and I know how to sequence them so that I can create pretty much any look that I'm really going for. But as you can see, there's many facets to the way that submodels are put into use into xLights. Everybody has a different belief or thought process to them. One other thing that would be helpful. Now imagine this, if you bought, let's say you bought a lollipop. I could open up my home layout and show you that I have lollipops in my show that I handmade. I made them from a Boscoyo spinner with a Boscoyo basic chroma trim type thing, and I handmade it, and I made a model on the preview. And what I did was I created 2 models out of it. One was a spinner, and the bottom was was a leaping pole. And the idea behind it was that I could, sequence the 2 in 2 separate groups and still have individual control of one prop being a whole prop and the other prop being its own prop as well. So whenever it comes to grabbing an effect and placing it on a prop, I want you to pretend just for a second that this candy cane, we're going to cut it in half. We're actually going to take the top half, make it one model, and then we're going to take the bottom half, we're going to make it another model. And so just imagine that you can do that for a second. This might not be useful as a candy cane, but it's good as a demonstration. So I'm going to come in here and go into submodels, and I'm going to add a new submodel. And in this instance, I'm going to do what Dale suggested, which is click, drag, and select all. This is a bulk selection. And here's the difference, though. I'm going to come up here to buffer style. So this goes back into these options here for the different screens that you see, or the different options up here. In changing this, I'm going to go to keep XY. And keep XY is pretty interesting. I'll call this spinner top, just so that you can imagine it being a spinner. It's not a spinner, but you get the idea. What keep XY does is it puts a box around the prop, and it's the submodel, and it says, treat me, what you see here, this selection, this collection of pixels in this submodel, treat me as a prop, as an individual prop. And that way, whenever we click OK, we've already tried, you've already seen the difference between the bulk selection we did earlier, and how the single strand effect went over it. Watch how things change now. And this kind of goes back. Here's the bulk. It's that haphazard bulk because we did it 3 different ways. But if we Control Z, I'll delete that, and I'll put it down here on what do they call it? Spinner top. Oh yeah, right there. Okay, and I put the single strand on here. Now what it's going to do per default, it's going to go from left to right, and it's going to go from the one side to the other side. And the reason for that is because in the submodel we told it to keep its XY coordinates. So wherever the X is and wherever the Y is, that it's drawing a box around it and saying this is my buffer. This is how I'm going to apply the effects to. So if you're trying to create 2 different models out of 2 different submodels and treat them as a model, this is how you do it. You can do the same thing with the base. If we go in, we'll do the base. And for example, if we go in and add, we'll call this a pixel pole. And we come down here, and now we just bulk select, just like we did the others. We bulk select, and we change this to keep XY. We'll click OK. And if we go in here and we put this on the single strand, the pixel pole, that may not be what the pixel pole generally does. Generally what a pixel pole does is it goes up and down, it bounces up and down. And to do that we might use the curtain effect or the, we'll use the curtain effect. No, actually we use the fill effect. Never use that. That's a good one to use. So here's the fill effect. I'm going to come over here, make it a little shorter, and I'm going to give it a value curve on the position. I'm going to say go from a low position to a high position, and that's just a basic ramp. So there's a ramp, and it's going from a high position to a low position. I want it to go the other way, so I'm going to hit the reverse and click OK. So now you see it going from low to high. And then we can go ahead and on the what we would call the spinner top, you could change some of the settings around and do from middle or to middle or dual chase. And now you can see that you have you have 2 different models that are submodels, and now you're sequencing them as if they're a physical prop. So this is the beauty of trying to understand the basics of submodeling, along with applying effects and how they're rendered over top of them, and why some of those options are helpful. The last thing I want to bring up is why having too many choices in a submodel is frustrating. And I end with this because, not because I don't want everybody to have the ultimate options. I want everybody to be able to do everything they want to do. The challenge is that when you give yourself too many options, it makes life way more difficult because you have a hard time deciding on what it is that you actually like. Well, I like that, but I quite like that too, and I really wish it did this, but it doesn't do this. And so if I go into, here's the PPD wreaths. So we have 2 of them in our layout. And if I double click on just one PPD wreath, you can see here that it has at least 32 rings on it. It has a number of stars. It has a number of offset stars. It has 16 petals. It has 8 diamond arms. It has the outer diamonds. Rob's wife wanted a snowflake made on the PPD wreath, so I made a submodel for the snowflake. Then I wanted to play around and I wanted to see how many more submodels I could make and what other crazy things I could come up with. And I came up with some inner petals and some mid petals and some small petals and a different way to do the diamond arms. And then I did more mid petals. And what began to happen was the more that I played with a lot of these different submodels, and as great as they were to mess with and have fun with and create, the problem is that we went from a list of, well, right now we have 1, 2, 3, there we go. We have 10 different submodel sets, actually 11 different submodel sets of submodels to choose from. This would have expanded, I could have expanded to 20 or 30. And to have way more options makes it even more challenging when you're mapping sequences from, oh, I heavily rely on the pedals, I heavily rely on the centerpiece and the center rings and the spiral alls and the clockwise and the counterclockwise, and I do a fair bit of equal distribution, because in the end, when somebody's mapping one of my sequences, I want them, or our sequences rather, I want them to have a good dispersal of the effects, because they may be using them for other props that are throughout their show, and that balance is always going to be there if I follow that kind of a rule. So that's, my goal isn't to overwhelm you with a number of submodels. My goal is to give you appealing effects whenever you map them into your layout. And every sequencer is going to have a different belief or process for doing what they do for their sequences. I'm not I'm not going to be disrespectful to any of them, because we all, if you're an artist, it's really hard to be an artist, let alone somebody who creates something. Everybody's going to have their own way of creating, and you know, art is subjective. I'm sure that many people appreciate what I do as a sequencer and what our sequence team does together. But I also know that there's a number of people that really appreciate the way other people sequence their songs. So if you see differences in what you are applying to your layout and applying or mapping, take into consideration some of these basic things. So guys, that's everything I have. If you have any questions, we're going to go now to our open mic night session. I'll go ahead and stay on the topic in the Zoom room here. You're welcome to join us. If you have questions, go ahead. We'll go ahead and open up the microphones and we'll go into the open mic session. If you want to stay on the submodel topic or you have more questions, we'll continue with that. And if not, we'll go with any questions that anybody has in the room. So by all means, huge thank you to everybody for joining us. If you're on YouTube, join us in the Zoom room. You're welcome to join us. If you're watching on YouTube, because I am getting these up to, I'm getting them prepped to get up on the YouTube page. And pretty soon we'll be streaming live to YouTube again. I cannot wait. So guys, that's everything from me. Robert, thank you very much.
No problem.
And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye for now.